Hey everybody, welcome back to Endure, the Athlete Story. On today's show we have Tommy Zaferes. Tommy's a former professional ITU triathlete. He unfortunately had to retire from full-time racing a number of years ago due to a heat stroke incident, which no longer allowed him to race in hot conditions, and he still does some part-time racing. You'll find Tommy very competitive in Super League racing and some non-draft races like Escape from Alcatraz Triathlon. Tommy now works as a content producer for World Triathlon. You'll see some of Tommy's unbelievable photos on his Instagram from all around the world at the different races, and all the athletes use his photos. Tommy also still trains full time with the Joel Filliol crew, including his wife, Katie Zaferes, the 2019 World Champion. And he tells us in this episode how they're currently in altitude camp preparing for Tokyo. And we also hear about Tommy's story in the sport and how he got into it from a swim background, getting into elite triathlon. And we talked about surfing, skateboarding, and how his career developed and some of the challenges he faced as an athlete, and how now this is unfolded into a job that he loves and continues to train and support his wife Katie in her endeavours. So it's a really interesting show. Tommy has so much experience in the triathlon world, from racing the best athletes in the world, he training with the best training group in the world, and it's just good fun, good stories and great advice in there. So I think you'll all enjoy it, and please let me know what you think. Subscribe, leave a review, leave some comments, let us know what you think of it. And again, this show brought to you by EJX2 Triathlon. I'm a triathlon coach with a background in sports science. If you're interested in getting in touch, talk about your training, looking for some advice for an event or a race coming up, I'd happy to get a chat to you. You can email me at ejx2coaching@hotmail.com, or you can drop me a message on Facebook or Instagram at ejx2coaching. So without further ado, let's get into this chat with Tommy. Thanks, enjoy. So, Tommy Zaferes, welcome to Endure, the Athlete Story. Thanks a million for coming on. How's things?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, stoked. Life's good right now, and up in the mountains in France, altitude camp. So yeah, can't complain.
Brilliant. So you're up there. Is that you're in the final preparations for preparing for Tokyo with Katie and the rest of the training group?
Yeah, so we're doing a short stint at altitude, short meaning 3.5 weeks, and then we'll go down to back to Spain and Beniola, Spain, for 2 weeks of heat prep before Tokyo, because as you've probably heard, Tokyo is supposed to be very, very hot. So.
Yeah, I heard. And congratulations to Katie, your wife, who gets selected for the US team to represent the US in the Tokyo Olympics. So I'm sure she's delighted to be going.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation because it was hard to celebrate, and it wasn't really delight. It was more relief, because it just, the last couple of years have been crazy, and then like lots of weird things happened, and the way the criteria was set up and all kinds of different things, that it was just like this super stressful waiting period. And yeah, it like nobody was really celebrating, which is kind of sad. It was kind of unfortunate, but yeah, we're definitely relieved to hear the news, and yeah, now it's just head down in preparation of Tokyo.
Yeah, because I think when the news was announced, you put up a post, and I think Katie put up a post on Instagram too about, like, yeah, they're relieved, and obviously it's a dream to go to the Olympics again and to represent your country at the Olympics. But I suppose the people that aren't going is like friends and training partners and that sort of thing, and it's a strange scenario, and like you're fighting for that couple of spots.
Yeah, it was a very challenging week right after the Olympics points rankings ended, and then all the different countries were selecting the athletes who were going, because at this point, a lot of auto qualification criteria was just out the window. So it was all down to discretionary. So it was just federations choosing which athletes were going to go. And so there was a lot up in the air of people who were assuming they were going to go and then didn't get selected, and then people who were hoping they would get selected and did get selected. And we're all training together, and like we're all friends, and so you want to celebrate, but at the same time you know how bad other people who didn't make it are hurting, and you don't want to like be happy while they're being so sad. And so and there's nothing you can say to people who absolutely just are crushed in the moment, and it just takes time. Like you can't say, oh, I feel so sorry for you, like it'll be okay. Like that doesn't help at all. Like
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where you just try to be as supportive as possible, and just kind of go through the days each day until it gets easier and easier. But like at this point, yeah, like you said, we're friends with everybody on the circuit, and half the people aren't going. So yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, and a lot of those athletes, well, nearly every athlete deserves to go, and like there's that many top athletes that are just so close on any given day. Anyone could be up there. It's just so hard when there's that many people actually deserve to go, especially like the likes of the US. There's such a strong male and female now that nearly everyone who competes in the WTS deserve to go. Deserve to go.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like when you're a lower level athlete or just a general person, you kind of hold the Olympics in such high esteem. Like it's the pinnacle of sport. It's the greatest people in the world. But then when you're really involved in it, you're like, well, it's a global sport, so they have to make these rules so that the whole world can participate. But at the same time, it's not the best people in the world. It's just the best people from each country, which is a big difference, because there are people that deserve to go there who are the best from their country, but they're not necessarily the best in the world. And so the spots that some people are competing, and this is for all sports, that they're the best from where they're from, but they could be 60th in the world. And then there's people who are seventh, eighth, ninth, and they're not going to the Olympics. And it's one of those
Yeah.
things where you're like, wow, the Olympics, in my mind, it used to be this thing where it's like, these are the best athletes from all over the world. It's the best ever, the best ever. And then you're inside, you're like, oh, it's not really the best ever. It's just like some of the best. And so
Yeah.
when you're deeply involved with it, it kind of makes it a little bit less cool, but obviously it is very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's just the balance of the mentality of how you think about it, how you perceive it, and then also like the participation, being involved with it, are very, very different worlds that yeah, you kind of have to navigate.
And you'll be going yourself, Tommy, as a photographer and as part of the media for the Olympics. Is that triathlon specifically, or is there any other sports you'll be
Yeah,
working on?
so my role will be photographer, because at this point there's not much media we can actually do, world triathlon media. So it's very, very complicated now, especially with COVID and everything, and like to put on the Olympics, like all the government rules and everything, it's very, very strict. So we're only allowed to be at our hotel, and then we have to have like personal transport. We can't take public transport. We can't have our own car. We can't take any, like ride a bike or anything. Like we have to have personal transport to the venue, and those are the only two places we're allowed to be. So it's basically going to be hotel venue for like 10 days straight, and trying to get as much content as we can. But we're also not allowed to do video stuff, and we're not allowed to do specific things when we're at the venue, because that's covered by the International Olympic Committee
Okay.
media.
Yeah.
So, and you have to register all the places that you're going to be beforehand, so that there's only a certain amount of people. And yeah, it's going to be quite interesting experience. And I'm actually looking forward to it,
Yeah.
because it's going to be different than anything I've ever done.
Yeah. But you'll still be there nonetheless. And I'm sure it'll still be, although different with COVID and all these restrictions, it'll still be, I'm sure, really enjoyable and magical time being at the Olympics and seeing those athletes
I just
compete.
found out too that some of our staff, we have access to a pool and to a track. from like 6 to 8 p.m. every night. So that'll be cool to be able to exercise. But then also they're setting up a relay race for the staff. So there's like World Triathlon staff, Olympic Committee staff, like technical officials and media. And so they're doing 2 relays, one 4x50 meter free relay in the pool, and then one 4x400 on the track. So
Sweet. So
we already
you're
have our relay
basically
set up, and
you're basically going to the Olympics. They compete at the
yeah,
Olympics.
exactly. Racing at the Olympics. So
Over
yeah, that
the
was exciting to find out.
probably the first athlete to compete in the 400 in the track and then 100 in the pool. That's probably a first.
Yep.
um,
Yeah, I'll
so
have to write that one down.
Tommy, take us back to how you get into sport. What sport was it first, and where are you from? First off, and growing up.
Yeah, I'm from Santa Cruz, California. I grew up near the ocean, surfing and skateboarding, and my parents got me into swimming at a very young age. I was probably 5.5 or 6, something like that. And that kind of took off. It was kind of one of those things where you didn't really need to test your kid in the sport to see if they liked it. I just automatically liked it. And then I happened to be pretty good at it. So it
Mm-hmm.
just, I never changed sport. I just continued to do swimming and didn't really try much else. So I played baseball a couple seasons, but was not into ball sports so much. But yeah, so I grew up surfing, skateboarding, swimming, all the way until through. I went to junior college, Cabrillo College, swam there, and trained with my club coach to Olympic trials in 2008. And then when I finished my swim career in 2008, I decided to just start. I was working at a grocery store at the time, and I was like, I'm just going to do that. I'm going to coach swimming and just kind of live this like paycheck to paycheck, live the dream of surfing all the time whenever I want. And
Yeah.
yeah, coaching swimming, kind of making my own schedule, and yeah, working in the produce department. I was just like hanging out with friends and not really doing anything with my life. But then I found triathlon. I ended up just doing one randomly and really liked it and kind of got into it a little bit more. And year later, I ended up getting coached by a guy who went to the Olympics, Victor Plata. He contacted me and was like, "Oh, I want to coach you. Did you know triathlon's in the Olympics?" And I was like, "Oh, had no idea. Like, I didn't even know triathlon was like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just thought it was like something fun people did once a year or whatever." And so he kind of like told me about ITU and the draft legal racing, and with my swim background, like it would be good to be able to like make a front group, and I didn't even know what a front group was at the time. So it was pretty cool for him to like hold my hand through this experience. And basically a year later, 2010, I did my first draft legal triathlon and got my elite card, and then started racing pro for a couple years, but still working. And then in 2012, I decided that it was time to go all in. And so I quit my job at Safeway, quit coaching, and just kind of like was surviving off my savings to make triathlon happen until I made the national team for USA Triathlon and got some funding. And then, yeah, I don't know how far in depth you want to go, but I
Cool.
guess really quick. But I met Katie in 2013. And then in 2014, I had an accident where I had a heat stroke and 2 seizures and was put in a coma for 19 hours. So that kind of basically stopped my career. I wanted to keep going, but it was very difficult to do that in terms of race schedules and not being able to race in the heat anymore. And also my parents and Katie being scared for me. So I decided to take a step back. At this point, Katie's career was going up. And so I decided to just train full time with her. And then I got a job working for a marketing company, and I could do that remotely. And so then that kind of fused with, I started working for World Triathlon, just doing little things here and there. And then that kind of blossomed into a bigger role. And yeah, that's the very short version of where I am now.
Cool, cool. Now it would be good to get into some more of that. Just going back to the very start of what you were saying there. So we were from Santa Cruz, grew up surfing and stuff. I was there in what year was I there? 2010. Um, it's a good spot, Santa Cruz. Where did I go? Surf Steamers Lane. It's a good wave.
Oh, nice.
Right
That's
hander
the
off the
very
cliff.
first place I ever surfed. That's where I learned.
That's a
Yeah,
good place.
awesome.
So we have some good waves here in Ireland as well. I do some surfing as well. So if you're ever over about Ireland, I can show you some of the Irish stuff. It's a lot
Yeah, if you
colder.
have a hood and booties and a
Yeah,
5'4" wetsuit.
a lot colder than California, but California's cold enough sometimes as well, up around Santa Cruz. Not cold this year, but it's cool enough. Um, but then so when you found triathlon, you don't weren't in like the collegiate program or anything like that. You didn't get like brought up through that way. You just done one on your own accord, like just like an age group race. Was that your very first type of triathlon?
Yeah, so there was a local race in Santa Cruz that I had just bought a bike from my friend's dad the week before the race was happening, and I happened to know the race director because I used to do junior lifeguards and I used to beach
Okay.
lifeguard, and so one of the lifeguards was helping run the race, and they're like, "Oh, you should check out the triathlon," like because I had told them I had a bike, and they're like, "Oh, you ran during like lifeguarding, and obviously you know how to swim, so like you should do the triathlon, like it's for a good cause, like it supports
Mm-hmm.
the local schools and stuff." And I was like, oh yeah, like maybe I'll check it out. Never owned a pair of running shoes my whole life, like only had Vans. And so I ended up getting a free entry into the race, so I was like, okay, I got to do it now. And so I like was gonna run in Vans, but my mom said, no, you're gonna get injured, you're gonna hurt yourself. So she bought me a pair of running shoes the day before the race, so I'd like never run in them before. And yeah, it was one of those things. The first race was pretty ridiculous. Like got out of the water and put on like cotton socks like that I got from Costco, just like normal socks, and then like had the bike shoes where they were super old bike shoes where they had the laces. So I was like tying
Yeah.
the laces and like click, 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 walking through transition. And I didn't want to get sweat in my eyes. So I like put a bandana on underneath my helmet. So my helmet's way up. Yeah, it was like classic first triathlon. And then, yeah, I put the run shoes on and like had never worn run shoes before and then did 10K.
And how did you
I
get
didn't know
on
any better.
overall? Were you just very
Yeah,
average,
during
or
the
did?
race, no, I actually did pretty well. I think there was like 1,500 people, and I was 10th overall, so
Okay,
it
see
wasn't too
it.
bad. But it was definitely I had like 3 minute lead out of the water, and then I was just getting passed on the bike, like the guys with the aero helmets and like TT bikes, and I didn't know how to shift my bike, so I was like in the big ring the whole time and on these hills, so I had like 40 cadence, like oh, and like guys are just going by me. I'm like, oh, they're all
There's
asking me like, how many people in front? I'm like, oh, so many.
there's nothing better than some just beginner spirit and doing things wrong and having those stories they go back on. It's not
Oh
fun
yeah.
when you're just perfect at the start. uh,
Yeah, that would be crazy.
so like, and then sorry, going back a bit further, your swimming career, was that, were you pretty serious about that through high school and college, or was it always for fun, or how serious was the swimming?
Yeah, so it was both of those things. It went in and out because when I was younger, I was very serious about it. And then, like when I was 10 or 12, I was going to all-star camps and like getting awards for best in the country and like stuff like that. So I thought that was like really cool. So I was serious about it. But I was getting really into surfing and skateboarding, and I was just kind of swimming because that's what my friends were doing. And like, didn't think swimming was going to really do anything for me until there was a junior national meet at Stanford Aquatic Center. Obviously, Stanford's a very prestigious school and like place, but it's only an hour from me. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of like having to fly across the country to one of these national meets where normally I would have been like, nah, I don't want, it's a lot of money, I don't really care. I was like, I'll go to this meet. And I ended up winning 3 events, and it was one of the new types of formats of a meet where they had just started doing trials, semifinals, and finals. And
Mm-hmm.
they also started adding 50s of events where like when I was first swimming, they didn't have 50s for like older people. It was only for like
Mm-hmm.
10 and under.
Yeah.
So this meet was kind of cool because I got to do like 50 fly, 50 back, and then also there's trials, semifinals, and then like finals the next day. So it was just an interesting format. But I ended up being in Swimming World magazine because I won the 50 fly, the 100 fly, and the 200 fly. So I was the only person at the meet who like swept an event.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, I was being recruited to go to different universities because I was homeschooled. I had graduated when I was 16, and I kind of took a year off school because I wasn't sure what I was going to do. But there was a junior college that was 10 minutes from my house, and my sister had started going there. And I figured, I'm like, it's like much cheaper. I can do the first 2 years of school there and then transfer later on. But I started getting recruited by all these universities with scholarship opportunities, and I kind of had to make a decision, like, oh, like how is this going to work with my life, and like what do I want to do, where do I want to go, what do I want to study, and I absolutely hated school. I like really, really hated it. So I was like, well, I'll go to junior college just to try it out, do the first couple years, and then like use the scholarship to do the final 2 years, or maybe redshirt a year, and maybe do 3 years at university and get that done. So I ended up swimming and going to the local junior college and doing really, really well there. But after that, it was kind of an in-between year where Olympic trials was in 2008 and I was graduating in 2007. I didn't really want to go to a university and train with a new coach and different program before the Olympic trials. Because at this point I was swimming quite well and I was ranked second in the United States, and top two can go to the Olympics. So I was like, I have a good shot at making the Olympics. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to train with my club coach. So the best way to do that was just to go to junior college, like in my town, which is like we trained at the pool that was at the junior college. So I
Mm-hmm.
ended up just going there for 2 years, swimming for them, swimming for my club coach, going to Olympic trials. I did not make the team. And then I was like, okay, after Olympic trials, after I graduate, I'll go back to university, like finish my degree and stuff like that. But after I finished swimming and decided to come back, I was like, I hate school so much. Like, I don't want to devote this much time. Like, I'm satisfied like working in the produce department at Safeway. I'm satisfied like coaching swimming, making my own schedule and doing all that stuff. So I ended up not going back to finish up my degree as a 4 year, but I have a associate's in arts degree in philosophy from Cabrillo Junior College. So
Very good. Good stuff. And what was some of your times there? You mentioned you done the 50, 100 and 200 fly at that meet. What was that
Ooh.
your swimming your best times or?
Yeah, no, so that was kind of like the beginning of me taking swimming seriously
Yeah.
again, because it was one of those things where, yeah, when I was 10 or 12, like I was serious about it, but then like 13, 14, 15, I was surfing, skateboarding, friends, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But then did the junior nationals, and then it kind of came back, and then I saw it as an opportunity to get a scholarship to university, so I started taking it more seriously. Those times, I have no idea what those times were, but my best times later on in the 200 fly, I went 159, so I broke 2 minutes in long course 200 fly. I went probably 53.6 or something like that in the 100 fly, which wasn't like super great in terms of the US, because I was quite small. When I was standing next to all the guys, I looked like a 6-year-old, like looking at everybody like, oh, they're so massive. But yeah, and then 200 IM, I think I went like 205 long course, something like that. I honestly don't remember because it was, yeah, a good 13 years ago. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it's quick swimming, and it set you up nicely for triathlon because I'm sure when you came to triathlon, was the standard of swimming like not as high as what you were used to in swimming as an event by itself.
Well, it was actually quite high compared to what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, I always swam butterfly and IM, so I never trained freestyle. So when I
Okay.
switched to triathlon, I actually had to change my stroke because I had a definite pool swimmer stroke, which is very front oriented, where you want
Mm-hmm.
to like reach and catch as much water in front of your body as you can. But in open water swimming, like if you're swimming on somebody's feet, the front part of the stroke isn't doing anything. It's all about the second half of the stroke, which is
Mm-hmm.
polar opposite of what I used to swim like. So I changed my stroke to a second half stroke, and kind of like changed my technique a bit. And I'm probably, well, I don't know. If I trained full time, I would probably be faster now than when I was training full time swimming, just because I never swam freestyle before.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like one of the first ITU races that I did, I was expecting to like blow doors on people, like, oh yeah, like I went to Olympic trials, like I'm just gonna destroy these fools. And like I was 20th at the first buoy, just getting annihilated, like because also in swimming, like you train to pace things properly.
Yeah.
So you dive in and your first 100, second 100, third 100, like if you're doing the 500 or whatever, like you don't want to use all your energy. It's all about the second half of the race. So I did the same thing in triathlon where I dove in and I'm like, wow, these people are all sprinting. Like this is crazy. And like just trying to keep a long stroke. And then, yeah, like I said, I got to the buoy and I was like, oh, like, and then realized I'm like, okay, triathlon's very different. You need to sprint the first like 150, 200 meters, like as hard
Yeah.
as you can. And then just like hang on after that. And like, so I needed to train completely different than I'd ever trained as well. And there are some extremely fast swimmers in triathlon, especially now. Like
Yeah.
the level right now of the top like 10, 15 guys is incredible.
Yeah. And did you have to figure this stuff out yourself in terms of changing the technique and changing the way you trained for swimming for triathlon, or did you have help from that initial coach you said you had, and like that whole process of rounding it all together to become a elite triathlete? If you could talk us through that and how that was.
Yeah, so another part of the story is that in 2010, Bevan Doherty, who's a two-time Olympic medalist in triathlon, he moved to Santa Cruz,
Okay.
and our connection story was even crazier. But he contacted me, so I ended up being able to train with him and swim with him, and he gave me tons and tons of insight just into triathlon, the triathlon world and stuff. But the whole swimming technique part, that was all me. Like after
Yeah.
the first couple races and like things when we're just practice like swimming on each other's feet, or like I'm like, man, I'm not catching anything like I normally do, and like I felt like I was spending so much energy and not going anywhere. And so then yeah, I was like, oh, it probably would help to change the stroke a little bit, and I changed it.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's way better.
Yeah. And just and on that note, if because anyone that does triathlon will know the difference between pool swimming and open water swimming, specifically in a race setting of open water swimming. It's completely different. And it's just as you said there, you can have the nice technique in the pool and pace it yourself. But when you go to an open water triathlon, it's mayhem. What's the main bit of advice you would have for someone listening that struggles with that transfer from pool to open water?
Yeah, for sure. I think the mental aspect is the biggest. Just being prepared for what it's going to be like, and prepare yourself for it being way worse than what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you prepare for it to be really worse, well, so I want to touch on two things actually, because this is important. I don't know if you saw the Alistair Brownlee dunking thing
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Leeds when he got
Seen that.
disqualified,
Yeah.
and there was I was flabbergasted at the amount of people who are like, that's so normal, that's fine, like I can't believe you got disqualified for that, like people do that all the time. Like that does not happen all the time. It is like, that pisses me off so much that people
Mm,
think that's what
that,
it's supposed to be like, this is
yeah.
what it's always like, this is what you should do. It's like, no, 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 that is highly illegal, like the biggest cheating of all time. Like that, it happens in open water swimming when you're hitting
Yeah.
each other, but you can tell the difference between someone doing it on purpose, someone grabbing you, and someone accidentally hitting you, or like you getting pushed under, or like legs swam over or something.
Yeah.
There's very big difference. So if people are saying like, oh, it happens all the time, like there's one thing, it happens like that you bump into people or you get swam over, but it does not happen all the time that people purposefully dunk you. And if they're doing that, or if they're grabbing you, that is cheating and you should be disqualified
Yeah.
immediately. Kind of a tangent, but I like,
And
that's one of my biggest pet peeves.
that was
um
intentional. That was clearly
well,
a
so
push
there's
under.
another
Like,
example from Leeds 2 years ago. Matt McElroy said in an interview with myself, I was asking, he's like, yeah, like I got to the first buoy and I was just like pulling guys out of the way because that's what you got to do. And I'm like, that's illegal. Like, and he had the best swim of his life because he did that, and he was on the podium, he was second. Like something so little people don't think can make such a big difference, but literally moving a couple guys or cheating in that way can change your entire race.
mm-hmm.
And it's one of my biggest things is that people are always telling you be prepared for like people dunking you and all that stuff. Like, please don't make that mentality normal in triathlon. Like, yes,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to hit bodies, there's going to be legs here and there, but like, don't expect for people to be purposefully grabbing you and like dunking you and hitting you. Like, that's not normal. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so my advice is be prepared to bump a little bit, and just keep your cool, keep your calm. If your arm ends up over somebody else, just relax the arm, don't follow through. You don't want retaliation. There, you have a choice. So if you're swimming and your arm comes over somebody's head or their shoulder, you have a choice. You can either finish the stroke, you can pull on them, or you could just limp arm it until you're out of it and then continue. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, my advice is just be prepared to bump bodies, and also be prepared to not be a cheater.
Good stuff. And like, if it's when you say, can you just specify like in the pool swim where you're all front end of the stroke and getting that early catch. Is that what you're referring to there in the pool? And then why does that change in open water? Like the with more second half, how does that like technique change?
Yeah, so in the pool, obviously the pool is like very calm and still, and the water's not moving around. So the benefit of that is that water has thickness to it, and you catch the water. The whole purpose of the point of swimming or like technique is that your hand enters in a place, and then your hand stays in that same place, and you just pull your body past that spot.
Mm-hmm.
So in pool swimming, the water is calm and still and thick, so you can actually grab it really far in front and then pull yourself past it. In
Mm-hmm.
open water, the water is moving around, so your hand actually slides through the water, and it doesn't actually catch it until a certain point where it's calmed down a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or so a good example I usually use is if you're ever pulling, like swimming backstroke, and you're pulling on the lane line, and the lane line has a gap in it and it slides, and
Yeah.
you don't really pull yourself, the lane line just slides. That's what's happening in the front end of your stroke.
Mm-hmm.
So your hand is kind of just sliding through the water. It's not really pulling anything. So you want the effect of the lane line being tight, where you grab it and you can pull yourself with it. So that's the second half for the stroke. So most of the time in open water, especially when it's like really choppy, everything in front of you is moving around. So the stuff below you and that's deeper is what's going to be propelling you forward. And so you're not able to catch deep until you're about halfway through the stroke, because in the front of the stroke you're pretty shallow in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's the biggest difference is in the pool you're able to grab directly in front of you. It's calm, thick water. But in open water swimming, and if you're behind somebody, like there's only one person in front, otherwise everybody else is behind or in the
Yeah.
mix of stuff. And
Yeah.
when people are kicking, they're disturbing the water, and when they're disturbing the water, it means you can't catch the water.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing to do is to forget distance per stroke in open water, have a higher turnover, and really focus on the finish.
Cool.
So, I mean,
Something.
this is me personally.
Yeah.
Obviously, I just say listen to your coach always, but
Something
uh,
to try and something I'll
yeah.
definitely try myself. What do you find if you're swimming in a race? Do you prefer the person in front to have a strong kick? And do you feel that's a better draft, or is that just more annoying?
Yeah, I hate that. It's so
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just hard because sometimes too, like I'll like to be slightly off to the side, and I'll have to change which side I breathe to depending on like where I am behind their feet.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if they have this crazy kick going on, then you're like breathing all the bubbles, and you're like and you can't see
Yeah.
where you're going and stuff.
Yeah.
But I will say, for the most part, a lot of the better swimmers don't use their legs as much. Like
Yeah.
it's more runners and like the poorer swimmers who have to rely on their legs
Mm-hmm.
um, to continue to swim properly with proper body position. But you see all the best swimmers are doing usually a 2 beat kick, just
Mm-hmm.
saving it for the like first 100 meters and the last 100 meters, and that's about it.
And that's who you want to be in behind, just someone nice and relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Next time you watch Vincent Luis swim, watch his legs. You want or Lucy Charles just
yeah,
sitting there.
I actually seen me and my wife after we got married went to Australia for 7 months, and we were in the Gold Coast for the grand final, and we were at the Gold Coast Aquatic Centre, and your coach and your crew, the JFT crew, were in swimming. I think it was 2 days before the race, and I had a broken arm at the time, fell off a skateboard. Stupid. I
Oh
was
no.
I was skating across a car park to put rubbish in a bin or something. I just slipped and broke my arm. Something so stupid. So I was sitting at the poolside. My wife was on swimming, and next thing, Vincent Louis, Martin Van Riel, Mola. I don't know if you were there or not. I can't remember, but I think you probably were on like photography stuff. So I don't know if you were on training with them, because the women's race might have been that day. It might have been the day before the men's race, something. So you might have been overworking. But Vincent got in the pool, and I was like timing his warm up, and he's so fast, so relaxed, just catching water. He looked like, because I think a lot of triathletes, and same as yourself, Vincent looked like a pool swimmer. Like he looks, when he swims, he looks like just a swimmer, and not even like the Brownlees and them sort of strokes, like choppy. They're obviously still moving fast, but he was just like a long, slow stroke, catching so much water. And I think he was doing like 112s per 100th, and he was just cruising, warming up. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah. We
That's
did a set the other day at altitude. So 1250s on 45, followed by 10 100s on 130. And he held under 30s, like 29s basically for all the 50s, and then 102s for all the 100s. And it's at altitude. And long
how
course,
much
50-meter pool.
on long course? That's ridiculous. How much quicker would you guys be on like sea level? How much does altitude affect you? Do you think?
Yeah, that's actually a good question, because being a pool swimmer, like the differences seemed like a lot, because if you would be going really hard, like 1 full second is a lot for 100,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
in swimming terms, but in triathlon, like it would maybe be, yeah, like 1.5 or 2 seconds
yeah,
for a set like that. Like we'd probably hold like double O's long
yeah,
course for hundreds on 130, 10 of them. And then, yeah, at altitude 102. So it's not like 5 seconds or something like that,
yeah,
but 2 seconds is still
yeah,
substantial.
yeah. Cool. That's ridiculous one. Um, so tell us then, Tommy, when you got full into it then, and how did it go that you started racing ITU World Cups and ITU World Series races? If you could tell us a bit about that, how it felt to
Yeah,
start.
so started off with the standard Continental Cups, because that's the first place you always have to start if you don't have any points.
Mm-hmm.
So I was racing just in like North America, like Canada and Mexico, and US, just to kind of get used to the draft legal stuff. And I did that from 2010 to 2012. And then in 2012, this was 2 years after training with Bevan Doherty
Mm-hmm.
and Chris Gemmel and a couple other guys that he had come in to train with him leading into the 2012 Olympics. They're like, you need to get to Europe and race French Grand Prix. The draft legal racing there, the development stuff is like way beyond what you're doing here. And like, I always thought that Continental Cups in North America, I'm like, oh, these are like hardcore. But then you
Mm-hmm.
go to Europe and it's like a whole different level. And the French Grand Prix circuit that they have all the different teams. You race in teams of 5, and it's the top 3 across the line from your team that the points count. So it's slightly different format, but it's still just draft legal sprint distance racing.
Mm-hmm.
So they got me on a French Grand Prix team, and then I had never traveled before ever. And I went to France, moved to France to train there with my French Grand Prix team and race some French Grand Prix races. And when I was there, USA Triathlon kind of put together, they had a new high performance coach or something, and they put a little mini camp in Spain together, and I was invited to it. So I went to that, and then ended up going to a few World Cups where I had enough points to be able to get into a WTS race. And so 2012, I did my first WTS race in Madrid, and I think I finished almost dead last. I think I beat like 2 people or something. Yeah, it's like getting dropped from like every single group. Like not a very good first WTS experience. But then in 2013, the end of 2012, Joel Filliol came to me and said at a World Cup in Mexico and was like, I want to put together a squad because I'm no longer working for the British Federation. And I want to put together just a group of people who can help make each other better. And obviously you have the swimming talent, so I would like you to be part of the group, because I think the people who are strong on the bike and the strong runners that we have, like ideally joining the group, we can all help each other and create the best group in the world, sort of thing. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like kind of rolling my eyes. I'm like, yeah, the best group in the world. Like, yeah, okay. So I like gave it a shot. I was like, I don't really have any money. I don't have any funding. He's like, oh, we'll figure that stuff out later. And like, okay, so we'll do the first camp, December 2012. Did the first camp with Joel and like absolutely loved it, and like knew that's where I needed to be to take my crew to the next level. And then of course in 2013 the JFT crew like officially started.
Yeah.
That's when like Richard Murray and Mario Mola and like Paula Finley and all kinds of people, like big names, joined the group. And I was like, wow, I'm part of like something that's like pretty cool. And then
Mm-hmm.
of course like now it's
No.
like exponentially cooler than what it started as. But it's pretty cool that now, because like I'm still part of the group as a training partner. I
Yeah.
train in the pool with Martin and Vince to push them in the pool. I do all the training with the women. So like I'll do all the bike workouts to make it a bit harder for them. And then I pace everything on the runs. And then also like if the women are doing something separate and the guys need some help, then I'll do a run workout with the guys, or I'll do a
Mm-hmm.
bike workout with the guys, like roll through with them. So basically I call myself the team mascot because I'm just kind of there to like help wherever's needed. But I've been with Joel since December 2012, which is the longest out of everybody. So it's pretty cool to have seen like the whole group and the dynamics and how Joel runs it and how he's changed and how the group has changed. And even the racing on the circuit has changed, and then how they've adapted. The group has
Mm-hmm.
adapted to the adaptations of the quality of field,
Yeah.
I would say.
And can you tell us a bit about how that whole dynamic works? And obviously, I've listened to podcasts and videos of Joel before, and just think it's class how he keeps that, like, keeps egos down, and he talks about that. And you hear other podcasts, Vincent and stuff, say like he doesn't let anyone run away with themselves. He keeps everyone in check, and then from like it's just coaching side of, I think he's pretty genius in that sense of the right amount of training and understanding the athletes communicating. Is it is it a daily just enjoyable group? And could you tell us a bit about how that works?
Yeah, I think you pretty much nailed it with your description. That's exactly how it works. Like it's not like we go around like, oh, let's get the best people in the world to come here. It's like, no, no, no. Let's get the best people who fit together to come here and then make each other the best. Because if you look back at 2015, like Martin Van Riel and Jelle Heens, like nobody would have heard of them.
Yeah.
And it's not like you would have picked them out like these are the best guys in the world, they're going to be like future world champions. It's like, no, these guys, they're talented, they're hardworking, but they're really nice guys. And
Mm-hmm.
so we have like Mario and Carol, we have Vince, we have Jake Birtwistle, we have Aaron and Non, like Katie, Emma Jackson, and like these people from all over the world, and the personalities just mesh. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we kind of pick the people that are going to be part of the squad. Is like it's not necessarily who's going to be the best and bring the best. It's
Mm-hmm.
who's going to bring the best out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so the group has been the same for the last few years, and the dynamics are just incredible. Like everyone just, we have so much fun. We had a pizza party the other night, and there was like 14 of us and all sitting at one picnic table, and it was like one of the best nights we've had in like so long. Just like everyone laughing and like no drama, just like pure joy. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what it's like every single day. Like no one is racing each other, no one's competing against each other, no one's talking about each other behind each other's backs. Like no one's pissed off at this person for doing that, or no one's pissed off at this person. Like it's just always every day you show up. And Joel's training, like we never have racing involved. Like we never go max speed, we never go as hard as you can, like go until you can't go anymore. Like that is never even a thing. It's always finish feeling like you could do more. Do
Mm-hmm.
not go too hard. These people who typically go too hard, you guys need to run behind the people that are slower than you,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that you're not going too hard. Like we need to prevent injuries. Like you need to tell me everything, any little niggle that's bothering you, we'll modify it. People that he knows train slightly differently than other people, they'll do separate workouts. Race schedules, traveling, everything is taken into account to make sure that everyone shows up and can be the best that they can be. Um, Obviously, like it's very challenging with that many people and like everyone being friends. So a lot of times, like if you have a set that's different from other people, you're kind of sad, like, oh, like, but Joel's always open to like having that conversation of like, well, okay, I was gonna have you do this, but if you really want to do this, can you tell me why and like what the benefits would be? And then he's like completely open to
Mm-hmm.
you being able to self function, and that's his whole goal, is for all the athletes to be able to coach themselves, like with his mantras and with everything that he's taught them,
Yeah.
so that they can be self-functioning and then just come to him with all the little details that they need. And he's done an incredible job of that, of going from people who just you need to talk to them for 20 minutes every single session, you know, to 10 minutes every session, to not talking to them all week, you know, it sort of thing. Like it, obviously they're talking, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he's not holding your hand. He's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
carrying you through things. He's training you to be your own athlete, to know your body and to know exactly what you need to do in a workout, to get the physical benefits that you need, and to be able to do it again the next day and do it again the next day, because we don't take any days off.
Yeah.
So if you go too hard, then you're going to have to miss something. And that's the whole goal, is to not go so hard that you have to miss training.
Yeah.
You just be consistent all the time, and then you just build up, build up, build up. And yeah, as you've seen, it's worked quite well.
Yeah. It's worked very well when you see the athletes that he's produced. And as you said there, it's not like you've called in like all the top 10 stars in the world and brought them together. It's brought them up from the likes of Martin Van Rijl, Alleghines. It's like they came up and now they're stars through the group and years of what you said, hard work and that just daily enjoyment. I'm sure it's enjoyable too, just training with friends in a group, and that's how you get through a lot of it. But I remember seeing Joel in Leeds WTS in 2000 and whatever the first year of Leeds was, 15 or 16, I can't remember, 15 maybe. Um, and like, not, I think there's anything wrong with this, but all our coaches were like right up at the bar shouting at their athletes, like going crazy. And Joel was kind of just cruising around in the crowd with his hands behind his back, checking the odd stopwatch and stuff. And just, and has like athletes were in the top five, four of his athletes or something were in the top 5 or 6. And it's like, he was just like letting them do their thing rather than screaming and shouting at them. It just seemed like, just that day I just seen him, was like, oh, it's that coach Joel Filliol. All his athletes are up the front and he's just kind of wandering around the course, just enjoying it rather than
Yeah.
going crazy. So I think just from that you can tell the work's done day in, day out, and as you say, like sets you up for doing it yourself and being able to cope by yourself.
Yeah, I've been with Joel for, well, in at the end of this year it'll be 9 years, and I think I've only heard him yell, like yell twice ever.
That's
And
good.
yeah, so it's pretty crazy that you see some of the coaches out there just going bananas, like and
Yeah.
then, yeah, Joel's just there.
Yeah.
But Joel, like, that's the problem with having a squad that you have 10, 12 people, is that you can't have 12 people have the best day of their lives. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't happened yet, but I mean, it could happen. But even if you have like 6 guys, not all 6 can win. Even if they were top 6, like
Mm-hmm.
somebody's 6th and somebody is 1. So
Mm-hmm.
Joel, at the end of races, that's what he says is the hard part. He's like, I'm never happy at races, even if
Mm-hmm.
people win, or like at the end of 2019, like having so many people on the overall series podium and having people like win the grand final and 2 world championships. And but he was like, he's happy, but at the same time he's like, ah, I messed up there. I had like 3 people who didn't have good races today, so I'm gonna have to like fix that to make it better next time. And
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to like pay more attention to the conversations that I'm having with them, because I think that they were too tired or something
Mm-hmm.
like that, where he's kind of like kicking himself because he's like, oh, I should have seen that, or I should have like paid more attention to the training peaks or the notes, or whatever it is. Just because it's like, dude, you had 2 people win the world title, and he's like, yeah, but 3 people like DNF'd, or you know, whatever. So
Yeah. Yeah.
he's like, it's never the happiest day ever, because
Yeah.
you can't have 12 people have the best day of their life.
That'd be the tough side of it, I suppose, having so many top athletes, as you say, not everyone's gonna have a good day, and he has to deal with that as well. What's your training like at the moment in terms of, are you on a schedule for you? Does Joel still give you training to do, or do you just do whatever's happening with the certain group
Yeah,
on
the
that
second
day?
one. Yeah, I don't. I use Strava because it automatically uploads from my Garmin, but that's the only thing that I upload. I don't upload any training. I don't track anything.
Mm-hmm.
I have Katie's training peaks on my phone, so if I have questions about what we're gonna do, or if I want to see what her workout is for the next day, that I'm going to be
Mm-hmm.
participating with her, I'll like check it out. But usually, I just show up to each workout, And yeah, in the pool, I swim with the guys, and then on the bike, I just show up and then have Joel tell me what he'd prefer me to do. Because sometimes if like the 4 women, he wants them to like practice team time trialing, then I won't participate in that. But if he wants Katie to have like a harder workout, then we'll just do 2 up, like Katie and myself. Or if he wants the whole group to have a harder workout, then he'll have me join the whole group, but have the like the women who are not quite as strong just sit at the back. And then like maybe take short turns or whatever it is. Like we show up that day, he tells me like, I think this, he's like, he'll ask me, what do you want to do? And I'm like, well, I'll just do whatever you need me to do. And he's like, okay, how does this sound? And so we just have that conversation. But most of the time it's implied that like on the track, I'll be pacing the women. I always run in lane 2. So I'm not blocking the wind for them. I'm just setting the pace so that they're not looking at watches. And if we're doing like a build run or something like not on the track, I'll kind of, he'll give me things to do. So like at 10 minutes, just put in like a little acceleration or something like that, and then see what the women do or see how they react. Or like, I'm going to tell them this pace and then you go this pace, and then just like see if that changes anything. So like,
Yeah.
just he'll give me these little things to do with the group. But most of the time, yeah, it's implied that I'm there to be helpful in whatever capacity, and I don't track any of the workouts. And yeah, when we go to events, I can't train really because I'm working, and so it's really hard when we have so many events back to back. So like, as an example, going to Yokohama, I didn't travel with a bike. So I just went there and had to stay in the hotel for the entire week. And the only thing I could do was the swim course familiarization, because I do the swim gallery. So I like swim 1 lap of the course. So I swam 750 meters that week. Then we came back, but then I had to go to Lisbon for that race. And so I traveled there without my bike. And I think I went on 1 run with Yella, and I had to borrow his run clothes because I didn't bring anything. And I think so that was like 45 minutes. So it was like Yokohama, week of like no training, Lisbon, week of no training, and then come back and I have to train with Katie, and I'm like destroyed. It's like so hard. But
Yeah.
right now I'm excited because also my clothes stopped fitting, which is not fun because when I travel, like we left the United States, I left in March, and I haven't been back home yet, and I'm not going back home until after the Olympics. So I only have to travel with like a certain set of clothes. And so if I am working these events and I stop training, all of a sudden my clothes aren't fitting anymore. I'm like, oh no. But I'm here at altitude, and we have like 3.5 or 4 weeks, whatever it is here, and then 2 weeks of heat training. So I'm gonna have like 6 solid weeks before Tokyo, and I've just been like pure altitude camp training, heat training, like doing all
You'll,
kinds of stuff, and now my clothes are fitting again. So
you'll be in good shape. So when you're on camp and not
yep.
jumping from race to race, you're getting a decent weekly training volume, and do you feel yourself
Yeah,
pretty
so I'll
fit?
train about yeah. So I train basic almost everything. So as an example, today we had a 60-minute easy ride. And because I still work for the marketing company that I do remotely, sometimes I have to catch up on work because the time difference here. When I wake up, there's been 9 hours of things that have happened in the US or whatever. So I'm like, catching up on emails and photos and all kinds of stuff. So today, like the hour easy ride, I'm like, if I don't feel like going, I'm not going. Or if it's like pouring down rain outside, I'm like, I don't have to do that. I don't have to race. So like, I'm
Yeah.
not going out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll skip things here or there, but I'm still training about 20 hours a week,
Yeah.
which is like substantial. So
Yeah. And do you feel, because the likes of like Super League and stuff that you competed in the last couple of events, do you feel that gets you fit enough, or would you like to be doing more? Did you do more leading into Super League? Well, did you know that you were doing Super League long before it happened?
so before Mallorca, I did not know I was doing Super League. I qualified because I was talking with Macca, and I was like, in Malta, actually, they had a swim time trial. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, when everyone's done, like, can I get a timing chip and like do the swim time trial just to see where I would end up? And he's like, yeah, for sure. So like after had like done the whole swim time trial race, they were like packing everything up. It was like dark. I just dove in and like did the time trial, and my time ended up being in the top 5 or something like that. So they had said, if you can swim and be in the top 5, then you can get a spot for Mallorca or whatever. And so I was like, okay. And I was in the top 5, so I got to start in Mallorca now. Better start training. So I did not know there, but I still had a pretty good race. But then I raced so well in Mallorca that I qualified for the final in Singapore, which was the next February. So the next February, I was actually really fit because I didn't have to work at all. I was just training with Katie, like doing the December, January, February, like base training stuff.
Yeah.
The problem was Singapore was ridiculously hot. Like the water was like 31 degrees and then the air temperature was like 35 or something and super humid. So, because of my heat stroke and seizures and stuff, I can't race in the heat anymore. So even though I was in really good shape, I did not race quite to my potential there. So I was
Yeah.
kind of sad because I'm like, oh, I'd love to do Super League, like really trained, like full on focused on training, because like that's my type of racing, the short, like even the team relay stuff, just like a super sprint, like that's what I'm all about.
Does that
But
suit you better, do you think?
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. My skill sets are for sure like super sprint style. And yeah, if I could go back and race, like I would love to have had like the team relay opportunities that they have now. Just like, and being in the Olympics and stuff, like that would be really cool. But at the same time, I'm so stoked on what I'm doing with my life as
Yeah.
a photographer and content producer. And just kind of like, I have no pressure for racing anymore. That was one of the big things. Like when I was racing, it's very stressful, like leading into the races and like getting sick or like feeling like a headache or like a stomach ache because you're like, oh, like I have to do well and blah blah blah. But now it's like it's so relaxing going into races because I'm like, I'm just here to like cover it and hang out with friends and like
Yeah.
showcase this sport to the world. And it's way more fun. So
Yeah.
I go in and out. I'm like, oh, I really wish I could like train full time and do the super sprint, like Super League and all that stuff. But then at the same time, I'm like, no, I don't really. I'm really
Yeah.
glad that I'm working.
Yeah. When you finished that and you said you got that the heat stroke, and did it immediately? Did your like racing full time racing career stop immediately after that, or did you go straight into the photography then, or were you already doing photography?
No, so yeah. Well, first of all, the doctors didn't think I was even going to survive. So the first
Oh.
step was, oh, I survived. Like, that's exciting. And then typically people who have what I had have to have like major organ transplants, but I didn't need a transplant. And then the other thing that happens is people have brain damage. So I lost my memory for about a week, but it came back and they didn't know if it was going to come back or not. So there was like a week where like I couldn't remember things and I couldn't say things, or like I didn't know what was going on. And so they weren't sure how long that was going to last. But then luckily everything came back and then it was okay. But it took like 3 months where I was like, well, I'm never racing again. Like that was that. But I could go for a bike ride with Katie, like for fun. But then after a while, I was like, I feel fine. Like my brain is fine. And everyone's like, oh, I don't know if you're fine. But I was like, no, I can do it. So I went to a doctor and like did a run on a treadmill and like some push-ups or something ridiculously tiny, that minuscule, that they're like, oh yeah, you're good to race. And then I just like had the piece of paper. I'm like sent it to USAT. I'm like, this doctor cleared me. So like their name says like, it's okay for me to race. And they're like, all right. So they stamped it like, all right, you're good to race. But Katie is like, I'm unstamping this. You're not okay to race. And like, so, and then like a lot of the Olympic qualification events were in hot places. So at that point, I was like, yeah, this is going to be really a big challenge if I want to qualify for the Olympics still, to come back. And at the end of that year, though, I decided, I was like, oh, I'm just going to race in like cold places or like towards the end of the season when it's colder. So I ended up winning a Continental Cup in Canada in Kelowna, same race that Katie won. So we were on the top of the podium together. That was awesome. So I'm like,
Cool.
back to racing. Maybe she'll like this moment and want more of them. So maybe she'll let me race. And then I was on the podium in Tongyang World Cup, and had like one of the best races of my life there. And I was like, oh, for sure, like I'm back, like this, it'll be all good. But then Katie's like, oh, I really don't want you to like race in these hot places, which are the only places I could qualify for the Olympics for. And so I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, you're right. Like the only races I could do well at were the ones that were cold. And the options of those are quite limited. So 2015 came around and I actually was going to the Rio test event just to support Katie. She just wanted me to be there just in case she qualified for the Olympics, or if she didn't qualify for the Olympics, she just wanted me there. So I was like, all right, I'm here for support. when I was flying there, and I'd put my name on the start list just because I'm like, what if somebody gets injured? What if somebody pulls off? I'll be there, so then I could race, whatever. So I'd put my name on the start list. Halfway through my flight, during my layover, I get a call that like, oh, somebody pulled off the start list. You're on the start list. And I was like, okay. So I went there with like no pressure because I was there to watch Katie, and I watched Katie's whole race. I was like there at the finish, and then I was like, I love you, but I gotta go because they're like calling the men to line up right now. So I was like, absolutely no pressure, and then had one of the best races of my life in a hot place too, in Rio. Like it was quite warm, but like had a good swim, made the front group. I just kind of sat in on the bike, like went to the front at the like critical times, like through the technical sections, and like to the front at the hill, so then I could drop back and like make it a bit easier, and like just played it like a total like weak sauce athlete, I would say. Like just a super annoying like person just getting a ride with the rest of the group, and like I was getting yelled at by Brownlee, like like I won't say what he said to me, but like it was just one of those things where I'm like, I'm starting the run. I had a really good transition, so I was starting the run in first. I'm running with Vince. Okay, now I'm running with Javi. I'm like top 3 right now, and then like a couple more people I was running with, and I had done 5K, like half of the run, and I was in the top 5, and I needed to be top 8 to qualify. And I was like, this is a possibility. Like I could actually qualify for the Olympics, and like this would piss everybody off. Like if this random guy who didn't even qualify to like be at the race, who just rolled on the start list because he happened to be there. And then 7.5K in, I was still in the top 8, but then I got passed by the chase group with Mario and Richard and a few other people. And I tried going with them, but with 2K to go, I was like, I'm so hot. I'm going to die. And I ended up getting passed by like a bunch of people. I think I finished like 24th. So in the end, it wasn't even that close. But yeah, for like 3 laps of the run, like in qualifying position, not bad. And also USA Triathlon, they had me swallow a heat pill, and they told me run next to the barrier so that we can test your core temperature to make sure you're not too hot and you're not going to die. And so I'm like running next to the barrier, and they're like having the heat scanner thing. I'm like, this isn't working. Like,
And did it work, or?
No, I don't think so.
I don't
But
think so.
yeah,
They've
it
got
was
those
one of those.
newer things out now, the core that you can like wear in your arm or your heart rate monitor that tests your body temperature. That would have been useful then, rather than swallowing a pill.
Yeah, I told him, I was like, yeah, I'll swallow it if I can race, like whatever.
uh,
But,
cool. And then you started like, would you say you're like the main photographer for ITU now, or?
yeah, so my parents were wedding photographers, so I kind of grew up around photography, but I was never really interested in it because I was like, it's what my parents do. Like, I don't really want to have a part in that. But I learned a lot just from being around them and like going through wedding photos and sitting next to my mom, like editing photos and cropping things and like what to look at. Like, you don't want this in the background. You don't want their head lined up with this. Like, you want to make sure that their eye is in this part of the photo, and like, and so all these little things that people don't really think about, like I just kind of had ingrained. And then also like my dad, I was homeschooled growing up. And so my parents taught like a lot of stuff. And one of the subjects was photography. And so my dad was always all about, do not take a picture that anybody could take. Like if you're going to take a picture, make sure that you thought of it. Like if there's 6 people standing there taking a picture of one thing, make sure yours is different. Like always approach things differently, do something different, think of something different. And so like I just grew up with that like ingrained in my mind. Like, all right, I have to do something different than like what most people do. Obviously photography, like you are restrained to fulfilling your obligations. Like you have to get certain photos of certain things that most people, if they have a camera, could just do because that's what tells the story or capturing the moments. But you have the opportunity to get creative, and I got all of that from my dad who is like looking at a photo is like, anybody could have taken that. I'm like, so,
but no, it definitely shows it. For anyone that doesn't follow you on Instagram, we can link it in the show notes below. But like some of your photos from races are just unbelievable. And as you say, obviously that's where you got it from, your dad, of like, you see a bridge and you're like, everyone else is just in the side of the course taking a photo, but you're up the bridge and like taking a overhead shot. They're like lying your back and getting these crazy angles. But there's some some class photos that you've got.
Yeah, thanks.
Over
Yeah, climbing things and getting arrested, part of the gig. No, only in Japan usually, because the cops don't speak English there, and I can't explain myself. But only happened a couple times.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. Are you okay for another? You okay
Yeah,
for another few minutes?
I kind of didn't really answer your question
Yeah,
though, because so Katie bought me a camera in
yeah.
2015, just kind of for fun, like for Christmas. So then, because she knew I like taking pictures with my phone, and that's what one thing that we used to do before every race was go for a photo walk, where we'd just go around whatever town we were in, because it was pretty cool to just kind of document places that we went in the world, just to have
Mm-hmm.
those memories. And it was kind of a way to ground ourselves in reality. Like, this is more important than what we're here for, and it kind of takes the stress off the race. Like, we're here experiencing somewhere in the world we've never been, and like these are photos to share that memory and stuff like that. So I started taking photos when she got me that camera for Christmas, and part of the job, working for the marketing company, because I had access to different athletes, I was able to provide them with some images that they normally couldn't get, because getting access to some of the best athletes in the world is challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, like, all the athletes have different sponsors, and their sponsors always want images. So I was kind of like doing that. And then at the race, so I had mentioned Chris Gemmell earlier, who was training with Bevan Doherty. Chris Gemmell is now the head of marketing for World Triathlon, and he is at all the races, like one of the biggest managers of everything that's going on, of all the people. So
Mm-hmm.
he had tasked me with, I think it was at Gold Coast actually in 2016 maybe, or I don't really remember the timeline, but he asked me, "Can you take pictures of the branding that World Triathlon has around the course?" And I was like super excited. I was like, "Yeah, for sure." So he gave me this like accreditation card, and so I was able to walk on the course and like take pictures of like the NTT branding that they have, or like all the finish line arches with all the different sponsors, and like
Yeah,
on some of the turns where they have just like the banners. I take pictures of that, and like the Toblerones that they call them, the little triangle things, and take
yeah,
pictures of that. And I thought it was so cool. And so at each event, he would ask me like, "Oh, would you be down to take some pictures of this, or take some pictures of the VIP lounge of these higher ups? Can you take some pictures of these people?" And so he just kept giving me accreditation to fulfill these like these small tasks for them that the other photographers didn't really want to do, because they're kind of like meaningless.
yeah.
Like, take pictures of people in the VIP lounge. I'm like, what? Yeah. And so I was doing all this like busy work basically, and was stoked to just get accreditation at each event. But then I ended up starting to do content. One of the media delegates from before in Abu Dhabi, I was like, "Hey, would it be cool if I Facebook Lived like the bike course preview? I'd ride on my bike, I would just hold my phone, and I would just film and like talk about the course, or like talk to the athletes." And they're like, "Sure, sure. Like, we'll give you accreditation, and like you can get on the course." And so in Abu Dhabi, I did the first bike course preview, and from then on, they're like, "Oh, that went really well. Like, people really liked it. There was a lot of engagement. So maybe we could do that again." And then at the same time, I had just gotten a GoPro, and I was like, "Oh, nobody does in-water photos. So I'm going to swim the course and like get pictures of all the athletes swimming, and like get different angles that the photographer, nobody else can get, because nobody else can swim the way that I swim. And like, nobody else can do this, and nobody else knows all the athletes. So like, the athletes are comfortable around me, so they have no problem like smiling, or like going back and like swimming past again so I can get another picture, or whatever it is." And
Yeah.
so I just was like enjoying myself. And so from then on, they started paying for me to come to the races, to do the Facebook Live, to do a couple interviews, to like hang out with the athletes, to do the pre-race galleries, because they never did pre-race photo galleries before me. I
Mm-hmm.
started providing the athletes with images of the in-water swim gallery, and everyone was using them to post about the race, post about World Triathlon, post about Abu Dhabi, post about Triathlon Live. And they're like, "This is huge for us. Like, why didn't we start doing this before?" I'm like, "I don't know. Why didn't you start doing this before?" So they started bringing me in. I wasn't getting paid money. They were just paying for my hotel and my flight, and giving me accreditation to come there and do these small, well, slightly larger tasks. And then that moved on to actually making a budget for me. And then I got a role as a content producer, and where I would actually come up with ideas, work with the videographers, and then come up with the like pre-race videos, with the different interview ideas, with different funny clips, and just different interactive stuff. And then that morphed into like Chris Gemmel's idea for the Triathlon Live show was like, let's have you going around talking to all the athletes like before the race, live on camera. So like, we don't know what's going to happen, and like, just go for it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I've never done that before. So it was just kind of like, each year I have no idea what the plan is. Like this year they started the Triathlon Live show, and so then we're doing like via Zoom, where we're just coming up with like different interviews with different coaches and like talking about the races that have happened, the races that are going to happen, and the different athletes. And it's just each year we're coming up with something new. But that's kind of my role, is content producer, whereas there's no real genre that I'm stuck in. It's just I get to create content for social media, for viewership, and for the sport, which is really cool, because I never found like I could never have imagined that being a job or like something that I would have done. And it just kind of morphed into that. And then of course, like me training full time with all these athletes, having raced with them on the circuit and knowing them, helps so much in terms of creating an idea and knowing which athletes to ask for this specific idea, or knowing what questions to ask, because I know an answer that they'll have, that they'll be able to give me, that I know other people will find interesting. So it's just kind of like a really dynamic, almost like a snowball. It started from the top, it was very small, and then it's just getting bigger and bigger as it's rolling down the hill. So it's been really, really exciting to be part of that whole process, and I'm excited to see what happens in the future, because I don't know what's next. I actually did pitch an idea today to World Triathlon that I saw, so stay tuned for that. So hopefully we can make that happen.
Looking forward to it. I think you seem to be the right man for the job, as you say. Like, you've been through the elite level, you've raced these people, you're friends with these people, then you have the creative skills and ideas to take it to that next level of marketing, because that's what that sport needs. Event like anyone, you or me, who's interested in triathlon, you just want more and more triathlon content. And like your photos, as you say, like just because you took a photo of a certain athlete and they put it on Instagram, now I know that the race is on tomorrow at a certain time, and I've got a cool photo to go with it, and then I'm going to tune in and watch the race. It's going to make more people involved, going to get more people interested in races. And it was kind of like my idea kind of behind this podcast too, of just like, I just enjoy triathlon content and listen to athletes talk. And then I was like, well, I could actually talk to them. And then maybe if someone else watches this and hears you talking, here's your story and here's that, then it's just building awareness and building like a bit of hype behind triathlon, and it's such a cool sport, and get it more mainstream and just continue for it to grow. And I think what you're doing there in I2 is massive. Like, it's just, as you say, like the funny pre-race interviews, all that stuff makes it more enjoyable and more exciting to watch.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
Yeah. So keep it coming. So next up for you, as you were saying at the start, Tommy, is full preparation for Tokyo, and especially for Katie, who'll be going the hopefully one. I'm sure you and her both believe that she's definitely a top medal contender.
Yeah, absolutely. Have no doubt in my mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been a rough couple of years, but it's all been purely focused on Tokyo. And she's proved in the past that when she has solid, consistent block of training, like, she's untouchable. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really hoping that we haven't seen yet Flora Duffy being at her best and Katie being at her absolute best battling. And that's like something I've been wanting to see for years. So I'm picturing Tokyo having all these top people being at their absolute best and just having an epic battle. So I'm excited for that.
It's going to be interesting to see. If you don't mind, Tommy, I have a few quick fire questions for you, if you have a few more minutes.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first up, favorite training session of all time on anything, swim, bike, or run, or
Definitely cycling. Cycling's my favorite. Um, for me personally, Strava KOM chasing. That's my favorite workout. Going out and then just like blasting some segments that usually I don't know what the segments are. I don't typically go out, like I don't study them and be like, oh, I'm going to do that. I'll
Yeah.
go out and like if the wind's going a direction, I'll just go from one end of the road to the next end of whatever road it is. Sometimes I won't even know how long it is. I just go as hard as I can. That's my favorite.
And see how many KOMs you pick up along the way.
Yep.
Least favorite training session?
Swimming, all of swimming.
All of swimming?
Just
What
swimming in general.
what's the worst swim
Probably just
session?
like, oh, sorry, Katie's telling me I was loud.
Oh,
Sorry. It's exciting.
sorry.
My least favorite is like 3K easy swim. It's just like 3K easy swim choice.
Just
Why even go to the pool?
just boring.
Yeah.
Favorite race on the ITU circuit?
Bermuda.
Cool.
If you want me to expound on that, I can.
Expand on it. Go ahead.
Just an awesome island, awesome vibe, awesome course. Really fun for vacation. Everyone, all the people there are so nice. Really good for photos. Really good for vacation. My parents and Katie's parents came last time, so just every experience I've had there is really good. It's very expensive, but in terms of a place where it's very easy for me to answer, that's where I would go for a race.
Okay. You don't have to answer this one, but you kind of do. Who's your top pick for male and female at Tokyo Olympics this year?
So I wrote down like a couple weeks ago my list because it changes. I was just talking to non-Stanford on the bike ride about this, that there's like 10 different men who could win on the day, which is going to be so exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wrote down my picks. So on the men's side, I'm going to have to go Vince, Bloomy, and Martin, assuming that there's a front group, a breakaway. And then I also have like my wild cards. And then on the
Cool.
women's side, I have Katie, Flora, and then the third, I think Summer Rappaport.
Cool.
Pending
Good.
she's able to hang on to the front group.
Yeah.
On the bike.
Yeah. Next crazy triathlon race coming up: Lionel versus Jan Frodeno on a head-to-head. Who's gonna win?
I can't see Lionel beating Jan. Yeah,
If he was gonna beat him, how is he gonna beat him?
He's gonna have to put like 5 minutes into him on the bike. But putting 5 minutes into him means riding up 3.5, 4 minutes after the swim. So he's gonna have to put 9 minutes on the bike. Let's just say, even if he had to put like 8 minutes, let's say, that's so much faster over that period. So, and then yeah, Jan's gonna have no problem.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
I'll love watching it, absolutely. But yeah, I mean, Jan is incredible. So I don't know.
Favorite training location?
Ooh, Banyoles, Spain. Yeah, where we're going for heat prep after this, just because like Katie and I aren't really big city people or like town people even. Like we're training in Girona, which is the town next to Banyoles, so it's just 20-minute drive away. But it's just so much busier, and like the cars and the people and like the lifestyle is just a little bit more busy. And like it's really nice for going to cafes and like hanging out and stuff, but we never go out to eat. We don't really go to cafes much, and we just really like the like peaceful quiet and of Banyoles, which is just, there's a lake and not many people. When you go for an easy ride, you're just out the door and there's no stoplights, no traffic, no nothing. It's just super chill. So we prefer that.
Cool. Favorite food?
Burritos.
Nice.
Not a Shelby Houlihan burrito, but just burritos. I don't know if you know the story that's going on right now. So Shelby Houlihan is a runner in the U.S. and she just tested positive.
Yeah.
She said it was from a burrito, but that's BS.
I read that. a pork burrito. Too
Yeah,
much pork.
but she ordered carne asada, and I don't know. So yeah, I'm not afraid of burritos at all because I don't take drugs. So
um, favorite sport and athlete outside of triathlon?
skateboarding for sure, and my favorite skateboarder fluctuates depending on the day. But Aurelien Giraud from France, he's one of my favorites. Gustavo Ribeiro from Portugal. Nigel Houston from the U.S. In terms
Yeah,
of like going to the Olympics. And then Chris Joslin is from the U.S. as well. Is
yeah,
one of my favorites.
cool. That'll be interesting. The skateboarding Olympics.
I was
I think
just
so.
looking, we touched on it about an hour ago, about how triathlon doesn't necessarily have like the best people in the world. It's just the best from each country.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the start list for surfing and skateboarding, and it's very similar. There's only about
Yeah.
8 or 9 people who are actually like on the world tour or like the best people. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other 10, because there's only 20 people per gender, like per street skateboarding and surfing and for bowls and stuff. So it's like, it'll be cool that it's there, but at the same time it's kind of sad because it's like, oh, I haven't heard of like 10 of these people because they have to come from country, they have to be represented from countries. But
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it's the first time ever in the Olympics, to me, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. But as you say, it's not like a world tour event on the skating or surfing is a higher quality all around field and
Yeah.
more competitive. But there's an Irish skateboarder. I don't know if you know him. A guy called Jamie Griffin.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to the Olympics or anything, but check him out. I don't know if on
Oh
Instagram.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
know him?
He's the
Do you
indoor
know him?
master. Yeah, yeah,
He's
the carpet
ridiculous.
skater.
He's
But he's
ridiculous.
also in Battle of the Barracks 12 this
Yeah.
year. So I don't
He's
know if you know
just
what Battle of the Barracks is, but
yeah. It's the where's the barracks in
in Southern
California?
California.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. He's
yeah.
just ridiculous. The stuff he can do. That's crazy.
So to me, his skateboarding is like the most creative in photography sense, like that you could come up with, because
Yeah.
it's not like some skateboarders is just like, oh, I can do a kickflip, I can do a 360 flip, just do the normal tricks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like Jamie Griffin is like, what's something that has never been done, and I'm gonna do like 100 different of them.
Yeah. He
he,
doesn't even
he's
he doesn't even have
incredibly creative.
he doesn't even have names for them. He just like he
Yeah,
puts
no,
a he
nobody
puts
can
a
name them.
he puts a video up and is like, does anyone know what this is? I just done it. But nah, he's awesome to watch. And last question, one piece of advice you have for a young athlete, a young triathlete that's on that process of where you've been and where you continue to train in at that elite level, if you had one piece of advice for them.
Yeah, the biggest thing that I learned that I wish I had learned much earlier is to control yourself, to be more consistent. You do not need to prove yourself to anyone in training. Race day is the only thing that matters. So, like, I used to always go way too hard race week because I'd be tapering and I'd feel really good. So I'd go super hard and then I would destroy myself before the race.
Mm-hmm.
Also, my capacity to go hard in training, I would just go so hard that I would kind of peak. And so I would just be training at one level the whole time rather than going pretty hard and then recovering and then going really hard and then recovering and
Mm-hmm.
having this like peaks and valleys, so that when I would get to the race, I would be able to hit a peak. I would kind of just be like fluctuating on like going way too hard on my easy stuff. And then that would make it so that my hard stuff wasn't as good as it was supposed to be. It was just kind of barely
Yeah.
above what my easy stuff was. And so I was
Yeah.
just plateaued. And so I would tell all up and coming people, make sure you do your easy stuff easy. Don't be afraid to do your own thing. If you're like with a group, don't just do what the group is doing because you're with the group. Like, listen to your body. Just go for a run. Don't look at your watch. Don't try to hit a certain heart rate. Don't try to hit a certain pace. Don't try to hit this or hit that. Just go for a run and make sure it feels easy. You can look at the stats afterwards, but don't be bothered by them. Like, just go as easy as you need to go. That obviously I have a lot more that I would want to say to a
Yeah.
younger me, but
Yeah.
basically I didn't start getting good until I figured that out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until way too late.
Cool. And just on that note, because you hear a lot of people say do easy, easy, and hard, hard. What is easy for an elite athlete like yourself and the the athletes you train with? I know you said like don't worry about pace too much, but like just to put into some perspective, let's say an easy run that like is supposed to be just easy. The only purpose is for recovery, for it to be nice and easy.
Yeah.
What sort of pace is that in kilometers or per
Five
mile?
minute K pace. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that
Five
is
minute
like
K pace or slower.
yeah, and that is
It's like 8-12 mile pace or something.
really easy for an elite athlete, because any sort of like age group athlete that trains a couple of times per week couldn't go out and run 5 minutes per K. So for you guys to do it, it's really easy. So for like an age group athlete listening, it's probably even like 6:30s or 6 minute per K pace or something like if it's 5 minutes for you guys, it's like even slower for someone who's not elite, just for some perspective
Yeah,
for people.
absolutely. I see that a lot too on like easy swim days where it's like some guys like Martin, Vince, and myself will be swimming. It even happens in our group. So like we'll be swimming the same speed as like Jake and Yella, but even though on the hard days we'll be 8-10 seconds faster per 100, maybe not that much, but like 5 to 8 seconds faster per 100. But then on the easy days we're swimming the same, or like if we're doing a pull set, we're pulling the same. And I always kind of want to say like, I feel like you guys are going a little bit too hard, but like, I'm never going to say anything. But
Yeah,
it's one of those things where if somebody is a lot faster than you and you're going the same as them, like maybe you should slow down a little bit.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Obviously, I would say listen to your coach as always. But yeah, my tip is, like you said, you can always go easier. If you go too hard, it can ruin everything. So, but going too easy can never ruin anything.
Good advice. Good advice. Tommy, I don't want to take up any more of your time. You've given us so much funny stories and good advice, training tips and stuff, and we learned a lot about you. So thanks a million for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. It's fun to chat with you, and I really like talking about skateboarding and surfing with somebody who's a triathlete because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
hard
yeah.
to find.
So show's over. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks to Tommy for coming on the show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, it would mean a lot if you could leave a review or give us some sort of feedback on what you thought of the show, what you thought of the guests so far, and share it with your friends or anybody who might be interested. We'll be back next Wednesday with another episode, another great guest lined up for you. So stay tuned and thanks for listening. Cheers. Bye.